Welcome to Reef Diary, day 26. Each day I do a diary entry about what I did with the tank that day. So a couple of days ago, I went ahead and calibrated the pH probe, and when I looked at the graph after everything was said and done, it continued to read like it had read before, which in theory you would think were good numbers. However, today when I started my tank, started looking at my tank around noon, which is when the lights had barely turned on, it said my pH was already at 8.3, which I knew was highly unlikely. So that's what made me decide today to replace the pH probe and do the calibration solution process all over again. This whole process takes probably about 5 minutes total to accomplish it and should be done at least once a year. The two calibration solutions that I use are 7.0 and 10.0, and that's all you need because you're aiming for something that's going to be around 8.1 to 8.3 every single day. Between each step, I rinse off the probe in some RO water, and then I put it back in the sump where it belongs. If you look at this graph from Apex Fusion on the far right, you can see it is now measuring about 8.1. The next step of today was to remove some coral skeleton from the aquarium because it was dead and it needed to go. I sped up this footage a little bit so it's not quite as boring, and I removed what I could reach. I pulled out Monty and I pulled out Acropora, and I try to chip away at some of the stuff that's more encrusting, which is actually very hard to remove inside the aquarium. There's nothing cathartic about this, but there are some benefits. Once the skeleton's out of the water, if there's any bacteria on that skeleton, it's gone. If there's any phosphate leaching out, it's gone. You've got increased flow in the tank from things that are no longer obstacles, and you have room to plant new corals later on when you're finally ready. Plus, you don't see white in areas to depress yourself with and to make yourself feel bad about the aquarium. So removing all this was the natural progression of what needed to happen in my tank. Perhaps not readily apparent, I have a bucket right here in front of me, and as I'm taking skeletons out of the tank, I'm just dropping them into the bucket. And I pulled out almost about a gallon's worth of skeleton from my reef today, which there's nothing to be happy about. That larger green coral in the background has a big old white branch on it, but I just know that if I try to snip it, it'll either break the branch in the wrong spot or just break it right off the rockwork, and I'd rather not touch it at the moment. But clearly that will not be staying like that long term. There's also another one there near my hand that's got a big white piece that I dealt with, but of course it didn't cooperate very nicely, and I have no idea if any of that's going to survive. I hate messing with a coral while it's dying. I'd much prefer to remove a skeleton after it's all said and done. So I am dealing more with areas that are 100% no longer living and trying to declutter. And that's what I did. Now that one spot there with the Monty, there's another clip coming up here in a few seconds that's time-lapse where I try to chip it away, but it's so encrusted. It is so on the rock that it's very difficult to actually remove in any form or large pieces. It's really just a matter of chipping off little bits and pieces, and it's kind of a beating, to be honest. So I only removed about half of it, but that's okay. I'm glad that I did work on this today, and you can see the difference, as things wrap up. It took a little while for the water to clear up, but now I'm looking at the tank right now while I'm editing this video, and the water's nice and clear, and things look pretty nice. Once I gave up on this rock, I went ahead and worked on the sand bed a little bit to kind of level it out because my vortex flow keeps moving it around. And you'll notice there's not a lot of dust coming off of that sand because the sand is very clean. I've done a good job with that in the past few water changes. Here are the results of my hard work. And then one final thing I did today was I sent off ICP test for the salt water in the reef tank as well as the RODI water in case something's coming from the city. We will see what they say, but I don't expect any surprises.